to say a little bit about France and why this trip was important, and why we had 9 people go. First of all, the fact that this work with France has more than a 10-year history, a 20-year history. Pam and Ramona have been going to France for years and years and years, way before the street was named, and have gone to many, many countries. Our international work has been a key part of the success we've had with Mumia, meaning keeping him alive, meaning having this kind of visibility, meaning the struggle goes on and on and on and does not stop. I always give the example. I was an activist during the Vietnam War. The height of the movement lasted from 1965 to 1973, 8 years. 8 years. This movement has lasted more than 30 years. This is an incredible movement that doesn't stop. It hasn't been able to get Mumia free, but that's not easy. That's not easy. That's not
worldwide protests.
So the worldwide protests, I want to say a bit about that.
Move on.
The people have often said about some of the countries, particularly the European countries, people have said, oh, they can really make a difference because the United States listens to European countries. There have been times when people have questioned our work with Venezuela or Bolivia, and we profoundly disagree with that. Our international work is not just about getting people to help Mumia. That is not internationalism.
Correct.
I repeat, that is not internationalism. Our work was not just based, let's see what country we can get to support Mumia. Yes, we're delighted. We'll accept any help from any country, almost. I mean, if the United States were to free Mumia tomorrow or get him Harvoni, we'd accept it. So our work is partially that. It's to get help for Mumia, but it's also because precisely what this brother's raising. We want to build an anti-imperialist movement. A lot of us in this room are not just focused on one issue. It's not just Mumia. I remember sitting at, I think it was 1998, maybe 2000, at Riverside Church when Fidel was speaking there. Does anybody remember the last time he spoke? He spoke till 2 in the morning?
Yes.
I'll never forget that. And there were people there who were very frustrated that he didn't say more about Mumia. Fidel is not, we're not there just to support Fidel because of Mumia. And I want to make that clear. I speak for myself. I speak for a lot of us. And I want to say that internationalism is very, very profound principle, dear to our heart. Many of us have spent all our lives fighting for internationalism, whether in Vietnam, in South Africa, in Cuba, everywhere. And Mumia is an anti-imperialist. When I visit him, he always asks, and what do you think? How is the anti-imperialist movement going? That's what he's thinking. He's not thinking, I mean, he thinks about that himself, of course, but he is deeply committed to building a movement. And he often has said, they're not afraid of me. They're afraid of the movement that we've built. Mumia thinks we have a fantastic movement. He's because he has that history too that we all have, living through Vietnam, understanding people jump around from issue to issue. So, and not just because of shallow politics, but also because the world is moving. How do you focus between what's happening, starvation in Africa, U.S. imperialism, French invasion in Mali? How do you even keep track? Not to mention everything else that's going on in the world. So it's very, very difficult to remain focused. And it is an important principle of our movement that we will stay not just focused on Mumia, because we focus on other issues as well, but we will not abandon Mumia and the other political prisoners until they're all free.
Prisoners.
Free them all.
We just, as a part of this activity, this report back meeting from St Denis of the street naming of Mumia Abu-Jamal, and this incredible delegation that was a part of that meeting, that was a part now of Black Lives Matter. Marilyn, the teacher who actually put her livelihood on the line and actually brought forth Mumia and the struggle of political prisoners and the state of police repression and racism and national oppression into the institution and fought it and joined us to be a part of the delegation. Suzanne, who hosted and said this was going to happen by all means. And Estella, just heard Estella speak about her revolutionary work in the Dominican Republic. Well, being on the streets of France, being tear gassed, maneuvering, getting the banner up, going in restaurants, dodging the police gangs, come back and forth, and checking on people and calling back to 1199 saying that they're attacking the workers, and we're calling back to Workers' World saying they're attacking the workers in Cleveland. To be out there with Suzanne was very heartfelt, and I felt very safe, and we really took on the struggle there. I coined it, like Suzanne, this was a revolutionary venture for the very reason I just explained, this delegation that actually went. I tell a story best. We flew with this delegation and Brother Keith, Mumia brother. We flew to St Denis, France, on April the 28th, at a time when 400,000 workers took the streets of France in a strike. Who we had with us? Estella from 1199, APWU, Bill Bachman, workers, activists, Black Lives Matter. This who we had with us in the midst of that particular action. We got to say too that this was an intervention by Mumia, and Mumia being a class brother, being a leader of a movement. Mumia took that delegation, went to an imperialist country with a solidarity host of the Mumia St Denis coalition, which we should commend them for the work that they did of hosting us. But we went there in the midst of a strike, but also in the midst of a state of emergency, where the French and all the imperialists and the European Union, who they're lending to like they're doing now in the games, was at work. This is what we went into. When we went into St Denis, we went into November 13, where 130 people were murdered in St Denis. The migrant situation, the undocumented situation. We got to remember North Carolina, the AME church, where 9 people was murdered. We got to remember now and join all that together with Orlando. This is what we raised today when we was at our rally, as part of this rally at the French consulate, where we took a group of us coordinated with Suzanne and with this action to the French consulate to be in solidarity with the general strike in France of the workers who were demanding 34 hours a week. When I looked around, I thought about the work that Estella and them is doing and others on $15 an hour. I thought about the history of my party, Workers' World, where we led campaign with many other people for $30 for a 40-hour week pay. This was revolutionary. The workers, the context in which we went in there, knowing what we were doing and linking this struggle together. That's what happened with St. Denis. When Suzanne was able, and other members of the delegation, to present a plaque of the 10th anniversary of Rue Mumia, the street naming, and the work that the delegation was doing here, among the international friends and family and friends of Mumia Abu-Jamal, IAC, and the New York Coalition, to the St. Denis, and they were singing and dancing, African dance, drummers was going on. This was a festive event. It wasn't any fear. It was pure struggle. And struggle that we have to father. Today, brothers and sisters from the French consulate, we had a good delegation of people there. Chris Severe of 808 was in solidarity Teamsters. Bill spoke at APWU and the Mumia fraction. We had other people from UAW, SUE, solidarity message and so forth. And we gave a statement to the French consular that this was a solidarity act with the people of France struggling for their 35 hours a week. Brothers and sisters, 1 million people came out today in France. Workers' power. Workers' power. And we were a part of that. This delegation met with and marched with in May Day with the CGT, the federation that's carrying on the struggle now that brought out 1 million people today. This delegation marched with the youth group, I'm not saying it right, the youth that come out tonight that taken over the squares, that's supporting the workers' struggle all throughout the country, the 2 months that they've been struggling in France, as a right of their own material mean that we want a right to a job. So if you're going to take back our struggle that we gained in 1968 and cut everything back and cut back daycare and so forth, you're talking about me. This is what the youth is saying. But the youth is emulating themselves or using a part of what's happening with Occupy Wall Street and saying that the French imperialists and bosses are the 1%. They're gathering in the square and they're using a tactic of what happened with Occupy Wall Street, but not using any sound. They speak out and so forth. But don't get it wrong, brothers and sisters. These youth are very class organized youth. They are a part of the union as a part of unions, members of high schools and colleges. They attach themselves to the workers right away. This from the Paris Commune. This from the struggle of 1968. What Mumia lent to this and the question of national oppression, for someone like Mumia to compliment and send a delegation to an intervention like this shows the national question. It shows the development and the historical period of radical reconstruction where we had people like this, where we had the John Brown and the Harriet Tubman, where we had the strategists and the people who, and he was leading communist parties like Workers' World who said, we be a vanguard, a rear guard. You are leading, where a mass organization took the lead to an international workers' struggle, and the party said, we have to carry out your work. This is national oppression and fighting the imperialism that's what's going on. What's happening in France today that our intervention came a part of it wasn't only a strike against the French bourgeoisie. Every European Union country is a part of being struck. Every one of them is in their games. Every one of them got billions of dollars tied to it. Every one of them was a part of murdering Gaddafi. Everyone was part of tearing Syria apart. Everyone is for the attack on Venezuela. Every one of them. And we tied that to the question of Hep C. We tied that to the question of we want $15 an hour, but we want to go further, and we want 30 hours for 40-hour pay, and we defend the right of the French workers and students to their 35-hour and down with the anti-labor law reform. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Buenas noches, familia. Welcome to 1199 SCIU. In this union, we pride ourselves with the fact that we say the social justice fight is in the DNA of the members of 1199. This union was founded in 1932, right in the heels of the Depression, by a man whose name was Leon Davis. Leon Davis was born in Russia, which then became the Soviet Union, and in the 1950s, at the height of the McCarthy period, Leon was one of the people that was subpoenaed by the House of Un-American Activity. This union has a long tradition, since 1932, of taking up progressive courses. It was the first union in the city of New York to come about against the war in Vietnam. Dr. Martin Luther King referred to 1199 as his favorite union, and it's a famous speech that he gave downstairs in our auditorium, where he said that he had come so many times to appeal for help in 1199 that he considered himself a fellow 1199er. Something that is little known in the movement is that the only labor rally that Malcolm X ever spoke was in an 1199 rally. And he told our members, you have to show the man that you're not afraid.
That's right.
So for me, it was it was a really, really an incredible honor to go, and thank you, Suzanne. Thank you to the coalition for including me and the delegation, and thank you all my fellow members of the delegation, despite the fact that I'm an obnoxious eater, and in some cases I refuse to sit in the restaurant with you. I went out on my own to look for my own food, but you put up with that. It was an incredible experience going to St Denis. First and foremost, I felt that I was in Harlem, East Harlem, the Bronx. Everybody looked like me. I thought that there was one experience, but then going the day after we arrived, going to the ceremony, to the street. It was cold, it was wet, I wasn't properly dressed, I was miserably cold, but the solidarity, the internationalism, the clear support of the people of St. Denis for what we were doing there warmed up my heart and my body. I don't know if members of the delegation remember that the mayor of St. Denis, although he didn't speak English and we did not speak French, but through translation we heard that a number of times right-wingers have taken the name Mumia Abu-Jamal down more than 7 times, I believe he said, in the last 10 years, and each and every time the town of St. Denis have put up the sign. And I think that is what you call internationalism. That is what you call solidarity. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Suzanne and I are not too far off, and so a couple of other people here in the room. I arrived to New York in 1965, August 13, 1965. So this August will be my 51st year of living in New York. I came to the United States not because I wanted to. I was in jail. I had gotten arrested. We had a popular uprising in the Dominican Republic in 1965. The United States then President, anybody remembers Lyndon B. Johnson?
Yes,
Told the U.S. Congress that 55 communists, listen to me, 55 communists were leading the rebellion in the Dominican Republic. And they sent 45,000 Marines. 45,000 Marines against 55 communists. On top of that, for those of you that may recall the struggles in the Congo, in Africa, what they were really looking for was for Che Guevara. Because Che had disappeared from Cuba, nobody knew where Che was, so the CIA, the State Department, Washington, they all thought that Che was behind the uprising in the Dominican Republic. So I got arrested by the Dominican military, interrogated by U.S. Marines, and placed in jail on, actually it was May 1st or the 2nd. And my mother was already living in New York. Through the United Nations and the Organization of American States, when the airport was open, she was able to get back. And she told the military, do not release her, because if you release her, she's going to go back and join the rebels, take her to the airport, and put her in the plane, which is what they did. So I came into New York, and I would say that I thank enormously my Puerto Rican sisters and brothers, because I come to New York out of a jail, out of an experience of a popular uprising, and my first encounter with the streets of New York is shit. If you have to fight the cops, where did you find stones to throw at them? If you grow up in the Caribbean and in other countries, you throw stones at the police and bricks or whatever you find. Here, there was no street, no stones to throw at anybody. But thanks to, and I say to my sisters and brothers in the Puerto Rican community, and especially one sister in the back, Esperanza Martel, which became one of those Puerto Rican sisters. And to many of the people in the African American struggle, I found that in the beginning, all I saw everybody was a damn Yankee you slogan the word that I learned in English in the Dominican Republic is Yankees go home. But then you come to the US, so I'm living here now, so I could not tell them to go home because I was now in their home. But I've been in this union in 1199, I was an active against the war in Vietnam. I was active in the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. There hasn't been one fight that I haven't joined, and I continue to join them. But I came to 1199 in 1986, and one thing that I'm grateful to this union, to the 400,000 members of this union, that in terms of progressive struggle and support for progressive causes, this union has never faltered. And the support for Mumia Abu-Jamal, to call for the freedom of Mumia Abu-Jamal, we have expressed that participating in activities, supporting by whatever means is necessary whenever you have called us, whenever Suzanne has called us, whether it's printing, whether it's mobilizing our members, and we will continue to do that until Mumia is free. Until all political prisoners are free. Because we understand that the struggle of our members is not only the struggle, we represent workers in hospitals, nursing home care workers, that the struggle of our members is not only the struggle to get good working conditions, to get decent salary, to get a pension, and to get benefits, but that the struggles of our members is the struggle for social justice and against injustice wherever that happens, whether it's South Africa apartheid, whether it's Mumia in jail right here in the United States, or whether it's stop and frisk that put so many thousands of our young people in the streets of New York at risk. And we will continue, and we will continue, and we will continue. We will continue the struggle for justice, the struggle for freedom, because it is not just the economic unions should not just exist for the economic front of what we do in the workplace, but we exist also to transform the society where we live. We also exist to change the conditions of injustice and to make a better world for working people, whether it's here or abroad. The capitalists, the 1%, they have class solidarity among themselves. The bankers, whether they're making money by creating medication like this that costs $84,000 a treatment in the States, the same medication can be gotten in Egypt or in India for $700 to $800, and it's a crime. It is a crime. It is a crime that sick people in this country cannot or denied treatment, and we should struggle because what they're doing, we got Mumia removed from the death penalty, but now they're trying to kill Mumia by medical neglect, and we are not going to stand for that. And the brother asked about what is New York doing. What New York needs to do is continue to multiply meetings like this in every setting, meetings like this in every church, meetings like this in everywhere we can talk to, whether it's 5, 10, or 5,000 people, to build the movement, because only the people are going to free Mumia. And the struggle needs to take. I was so emotional about this whole issue going to France. It was my first time going. People told me, what you saw in Paris? And I said, I don't know. I got tear gas in Paris on May Day. That's all I saw, tear gas at the May Day demonstration. But the experience of being in St Denis, it was such an incredible example of solidarity that people that were not speaking English, they were speaking French, that they were expressing that solidarity, that the people at the May Day March, there was a huge Free Mumia banner on the sidewalk for the French workers, members of the CGT took with them. And for me, that was what Suzanne speaks about internationalism. That's what internationalism is about. I tend to quote all the time Amilcar Cabral. And he used to say, and for those who have forgotten, that's when you get old, who Amilcar Cabral was. He was an African revolutionary. And Amilcar Cabral, one of my favorite quotes of his, and I'm paraphrasing, is that solidarity is not an act of charity. Solidarity is an act of mutual defense of our common interest. So for the French workers, defending Mumia is also defending themselves. And for us here in the United States, in the labor movement, fighting for Mumia is also fighting for workers' rights.
Mumia is largely the reason why I do the work that I do. I learned about Mumia in 2012, not too long ago, way after many of you have been struggling with and for Mumia for years and even decades. But I learned about Mumia through fellow educators and mostly through educators from Mumia Abu-Jamal. I'm a public school teacher, and Mumia's story captivated me, not coincidentally, like it did many of us. And his story is powerful, as we all know. But I think most importantly to highlight is his work and how much reading Live from Death Row taught me about revolutionary love and radical democracy, and how listening to him on prison radio taught me about international struggle and taught me how to have an international lens on my analysis of everything. And so at the time I was doing a master's program at Columbia University's Teachers College, and I was doing a lot of my work around the school-to-prison pipeline. I knew that this was something I was passionate about because growing up in a predominantly white district, I was oftentimes reprimanded for minor infractions that my white counterparts were not reprimanded for. So I knew this always existed, I knew this was always a thing, but once I got to grad school, I was able to articulate what I was feeling my entire life. Mumia helped me with that analysis, and that's why I'm here today, and that's why I do the work that I do, and that's why I was extremely honored to be on this delegation, and I was extremely honored to be in St Denis with folks who are struggling internationally around the struggle for Mumia and to free Mumia. So a little bit of background story of my legal case and everything that's gone on with me this past year. Last spring of 2015, I was terminated for allowing my third grade students to write letters to Mumia. It was a very high profile case. It hit media outlets and news internationally. And it was definitely an experience. It's been one hell of a year. But I want to share a little bit about what that looked like and what that looked like in the classroom in particular. So last year, so during the school year of 2014-2015, for the month of Black History Month, so in February, I taught Mumia Abu-Jamal. I taught him as a Black leader for Black History Month, someone who did a lot of community work in the community of Philadelphia, someone who was a renowned journalist, someone who has multiple publications, someone who has advocated for his community in a way that was extremely impactful, in a way that was extremely powerful, and in a way that was extremely courageous. And so I told my students about Mumia, about his work, about how he reported on acts of police brutality, acts of white supremacy and racial discrimination and anti-Black state violence by the Philadelphia police. And so my students were extremely captivated by this story and were extremely captivated by Mumia Abu-Jamal. We explored plenty of figures during the month of Black History Month. We talked about Angela Davis, we talked about Assad Shakur, we talked about Ida B. Wells, Ella Baker. I mean, a lot of folks who are not often seen in our textbooks, who are not often covered in our curriculum. And my students were extremely excited and captivated by these stories. So in the month of April, we know that last April, Mumia was extremely ill. So I shared this news with my students, and my students asked me if they could write letters to Mumia, get well letters to make him feel better. I said yes, of course. They wrote the letters, and then one of my students raised their hand, and she said, Ms. Zuniga, will you be able to get these letters to Mumia? And I said, you know what, I don't know if that's going to happen, because at the time I didn't know how I was going to get the letters to Mumia. Then I spoke with Johanna Fernandez the next day on the phone. I told her what my students had done. I told her that they were absolutely beautiful letters, that they were extremely kind words, that they showed empathy and love. And she was so excited. She said, I have to get those letters to Mumia. Those letters were in Mumia's hands that next Sunday, and Mumia was able to stand up and take pictures that day, which he hadn't been able to do for some time. And then soon after, of course, the Fraternal Order of Police got news via social media that I had allowed my students to do this in my classroom, in a public school classroom at that. And of course, Fox News went wild. They picked up the story that same night, and the next day, of course, my administration and my district was calling me, telling me that I was suspended without pay. It was a long 1-month battle with my district. I had to report to the rubber room every day and had to try to negotiate with them when their negotiations are absolutely unreasonable. And all I wanted to do was get reinstated so that I could finish off the school year with my kids. That didn't happen, and a month later they decided to terminate me. An important part of the story, or a critical point of the story, is that the community of Orange, of Newark, New Jersey, and folks from even New York City came out to support not solely the cause to free Mumia, but also understanding the larger picture of what Mumia represents, that he represents justice, that he represents freedom, that he represents telling the truth, and that our babies and that our students and our young folk deserve to learn about this and deserve to have this in the classroom and should be learning about this and should have access to this in their curriculum.